Welcome back to another episode of Tech Unhinged, where tech gets human, powered by Code District. I'm your host, Rabia Javid, and today we are joined by a woman who has spent over 25 years deploying technology at scale from Wall Street to the federal government. She is LinkedIn top voice in AI, senior manager for global responsible AI at Accenture, and a keynote speaker who has been doing the hard work of enterprise transformation long before most people knew how to spell AI governance. Today we are talking agentic AI in business, what it is, what it means, and what leaders need to know right now. Barbara Pender, welcome to Tech Unhinged.
Thank you so much for having me. I am really honored to be here.
Well, Barbara, we'll dive right in. In 2007, you were asking what Facebook was doing to our relationships. Today, we are asking what AI is doing to our jobs, our trust, our lives. Do you think the question ever actually changes, or do we just swap out the technology?
Oh, that's a really good question. The technology is the same in the sense that it hit us in the same manner. It came on board, it took off right away. Both have taken off without the proper governance. So is it strengthening our human decision making, or is it replacing our human judgment? Is something that we really need to, really need to think about. I remember when social media first time came on the scene, my daughter was in college. So that's where it started. It was all the rave. It was about getting to know one another, but then it took it to another level, beginning to know one another's business. That's where the risk came in, and that's where the relationships falter. I did a road trip on media, about is social media ruining your relationships? Because I clearly saw that the trust factor was let loose because you're talking to any and everybody who was participating on said platform, and then other platforms came into play. So with AI, the stakes are significantly higher because we're no longer talking about what people see. We're talking about the influence. We're talking about still the lack of governance. And if we can circle around to AI, impact the hiring and how does it weave in and out of the different industries, and who gets access and who gets the opportunities, and then who gets left behind, because none of that is in play. So for me, the lesson in social media is clear. When you think about how technology scales much faster than governance, you have to have the governance in place. What human value are we protecting is the question that we need to continue to ask throughout, or are we losing it all?
Yeah, no, sounds great. Which business function do you think is agentic AI actually completely ready for at the moment, and which one isn't?
So I like the question of business function versus industries, because at any given point, the industries can be apples and apples because we all have the same functions. So you're talking about functions that are rich in documentation, functions that are rich in tasks, functions that are rich in already developed models that are already producing outcomes, as opposed to the type of business functions that need versions. We remember, well, that word never has gone away. So with all technologies, there are different versions and there are always improvement. Talking to my Apple people and my Android people, there's always an update. And so it doesn't do well when you're continuing to have to fix something. You're not ready to implement AI if you're still working on a problem that you have not developed an outcome. So it's not about jumping on board AI because it is the newest shiny penny without fixing what you have in place. So with that said, those particular business functions will not fare well when introducing AI because there's something that is broken there.
And this is exactly where, our next question starts from, that, we see that most companies are just layering agents onto old broken workflows. The ones which are probably winning are redesigning from the scratch, making things agent native. But how does a leader know which camp they are in?
I think a leader is very much aware if they remove the noise and remove the competition, right? So if I can just go back to social media for a moment, because it took a while for corporate America to get on board, and rightfully so. We can all see what we were doing on that platform after 5 when we went home, and we didn't want to bring any of that into corporate America. You got your employees, you treat them good, bad, or indifferent. You have promotion season, they get a promotion or they don't. And you have your your goals for a set year, and employees are in agreement or they are not. And now you give them a platform to voice all of that. So leaders know, right? And it was the few companies that stepped out on faith that said, we got to get the social media go because it's free marketing. Let's be clear and fair about that. And so they set the standard of that. But leaders are very much aware. They know that AI can help them move faster. They also know that AI is there to transcend above what their goals can be. So it's just a matter of, what do you put in place first? What workflows do you look at that you already have in place, working in some capacity? So if you were in agreement with them this time last year, then they're working. And so you look at those particular workflows and you start from there. It's all about knowing exactly where to start when you have any new technology, to be honest. Or do you just build something brand new? That's saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, kind of applies when you're looking at a new technology. You want to look at improvements. And I wish we would have had this revenue to take this workflow or deployment to the next level. That's where AI can come in and help along the way.
That's a great insight, Barbara. We also see that security teams are drowning in alerts, thousands a day. Most of them are barely just noises. Goldman Sachs threw agents at that problem and cut investigation time by 58%. What can an agent do there that traditional automation simply couldn't?
So the focus there was the traditional automation. And so just let's quickly talk about that versus the agentic AI. Traditional automation, they work with predefined rules. You do this step, you do that step to get that outcome. Well, agentic AI takes all of those rules and they can interpret the context based on how you have orchestrated them. So for instance, an analyst might spend hours collating, looking at alerts, reviewing events, documentation, all of the things that an analyst does, identifying those patterns to determine the next actions. Traditional automation can move that information from one place to the other. An agent helps assemble the story. It can gather the signals and the multiple systems. It can summarize, it can identify, and it can recommend actions and escalate based on risk. So you can see where traditional automation sort of has a period, where agentic AI gives you a comma to continue on. So the breakthrough isn't that agents replace those agents, because I know that that is still a hot topic. It's that they dramatically reduce the time that it takes those analysts to get that context before making a decision. So here's the lesson for business leaders. It's pretty simple. You want to look for workflows where highly skilled people are spending more time collecting that information before acting on it.
I was going through your LinkedIn and I saw that when Anthropic safety lead resigned earlier this year, you wrote that every organization should be asking who actually owns responsible AI inside your company. What did you mean by it, and how do you explain this term?
It is the responsible AI can really be the silent killer. We all know that it has its place. It sits right there at the convergence of every executive function. Legal touches it, security touches it, risk touches it, compliance, technology, HR touches it. So in essence, your business is all involved in that component of it. So the result is often shared. The accountability is there. It is the ownership that we need to work on, that we need to improve upon, because governance cannot operate in ambiguity. So you have to have that in place. I find that the result is often where every organization should have a named executive sponsor. There's a seat at the table that never goes away when it comes to responsible AI. It is everybody's responsibility and nobody's one job. And that's the approach that should be taken.
You can't hand an agent full autonomy on day one. There's a progression where we start off with assist, execute, optimize, and then orchestrate. What does an agent actually have to prove before you let it off the leash?
Let it go. It's a little scary when you put it in those terms, but that is the job of the agent, right? So trust must be earned for that agent. That agent has to go through a couple of stages. And if you follow these or stages like that, and I will be happy if stages are in place altogether, which I'm sure they are, because that's how we improve the workflow. So assist, execute, make sure it can optimize, And once you make sure that it and other agents can optimize, then you can orchestrate. So before that autonomy, you need to see it demonstrate, and you need to see it demonstrate the following, more or less: reliability, accuracy, of course, explainability, audit ability. So that's your rinse and repeat, the bias mitigation, the failure recovery, that's your red team in place, and the business value. So let's hold the key question, which isn't can the agent do the task? The key question is, can we trust the agent when the task doesn't go as planned? That's where enterprise readiness is determined, because things will go wrong. Things go wrong on the human side. The human are building the agents. The agents must comply, and therefore things will go wrong. And so what do you have in place?
All right. So moving to our next question. This is something that not most of the leaders are talking about. So, when it comes to sustainability in AI, agentic systems running at enterprise scale consume a lot of compute. What's the environmental cost that nobody talks about?
I liken the rise of sustainability, data centers in particular, to how we entered EV, electronic vehicles. What did we have in place when that came on board? Just out of the blue, all of the electrical vehicles were on board. And yes, I am not saying that that is not a good thing by any means. What I am saying is, were we ready for it, right? Did we have the right things in place? How did we make room for it? Those are the things that we need to think about when we are building these data centers, which every other week I am looking at something on LinkedIn or any other news outlet about another data center that is opening up. So with that said, some of the things that we don't think about, that we are not paying attention to, is the cost factor. The different models that we have in place right now, what does it require? Does it require something so huge when something so small can clearly take its place? The functionality of it, does it matter if the way that we are computing and the energy that we are burning, does it matter right now when we are looking at what it can be doing to our environment later? So what's not being talked about is how coming about to store this information. Most people focus on energy and they require to train large model. The bigger issue can actually be what happens afterwards. These agents that we've been talking about for the past couple of minutes, they're querying systems, calling on APIs, they generate outputs, storing information, validating responses, the rinse and repeat that I spoke about. You multiply that by thousands of employees and hundreds of business processes, and that energy demand becomes substantial. So again, leaders should be asking, does every workflow require a large model? Can a smaller model accomplish the same task? Can response be reused instead of regenerated? And are we measuring the compute consumption alongside the business value? Responsible AI must also be sustainable AI.
I guess that's a very way to phrase it, that how responsible AI has to be sustainable AI and vice versa, though. Barbara, how would you explain, or what does good governance actually look like in context of agentic AI?
Good governance really looks like a town hall meeting. At the end, town hall meeting has its own agenda. It presents it. At the end, it opens it up for questions. That's what good governance looks like. And that means that everybody who has attended that town hall meeting gets the opportunity to give their feedback, their concerns, and that is taken into consideration. So governance is about the people or the employees. Governance is about the culture and the environment of such. Whether you are an entrepreneur or in corporate America, nonprofit, governance has its place. When it looks like your environment, you are doing a good job, because you know exactly who to pull in, especially when you're moving towards a new technology, and to get their feedback. A lot of decisions are made from the top down. AI is changing all of that. It include everyone, as many people as possible, so that you can remove all the bias, you make sure you're on the right track. If your company is in different regions, what you do for North Dakota, you would not be doing for Northern California, right? So you have to have the input from your entire culture environment at your corporation. connection, if I can just focus on that part of it. Governance looks like equality. It looks like inclusivity.
Very well put. So now another angle, that I'm very interested to hear your thoughts on. You spent 25 years as a woman in rooms where the technology was being built and deployed. Now you govern responsible AI. When we say AI inherits the biases of whoever builds it, how personal does that get for you?
That gets very, very personable. In the very beginning, in my infancy of it all, when I was able to stages to talk about it, I invited everyone. I made sure that they were aware that their input mattered. And that was at the beginning when all we had was, well, not all we had, but the big thing was fear. It's going to take our jobs, it's going to take over. What is it doing? Business is going to move on without us. As a former trainer, when I would come in to train software applications, it would be right at the beginning of an employee just getting the old system. Here I come in training them on a new system. And some of them left because of that fear. But we have to be concerned and aware of how this is going to affect everyone. And so without sounding like a record, it matters. It matters what everyone thinks about what you're doing in your company. When you're doing your testing, it matters that we have asked the right questions. It matters that we are inclusive. If you think of the insurance industry and what you have already had in place, you take all of those PDFs from what made you a success then, and now you get a chance to start all over because now you're putting it into a tool that's going to determine your output. You don't want the same output when you can improve the output. So just make sure that everyone has that opportunity. There was a point of also, I like to go back to when it came to technology, the laptop era. It should not have taken decades to get a laptop in every school, right? It was only the privileged few that got that first, and now every school has it. So I liken that to how we have come upon AI. It is moving like nobody's business. It's beyond on skates, right? It's almost the Grand Prix in a sense, and it is moving, but the technology cannot move faster than the governance. And we have to make sure that we pause and make sure that everyone has access to it and everyone's access is represented.
In extension to this, Barbara, I was also, reading one of your posts, where you talked about if AI didn't know better, and probably, you coined as an idea to probably have your own podcast platform where you're going to probably be talking about this more. So maybe if you can, put more light on this for our listeners.
Yes. If I didn't know better, I concluded that from a lot of my panels and, speaking engagements and looking at people's realization. I didn't know it could do that. Well, if I didn't know better, I would have jumped on board earlier. And so I thought that would just be a good way to hear regular people's story of how AI affected them and how they came on board with using it. That really is an awakening statement for a lot of tools, right? You think about the cell phone industry. And cell phones used to be this big, right? And the privileged few, of course, had them in cars. And I used to sell to the privileged few, and now they're the size of your palm. Or we wish they would go back to the size of our palm. We now want them to be bigger. We go from big to small. But it's that point of acceptance when people are on board and they start to really use the tool, and they say, well, if I didn't know better, I would have been on board a long time ago. And this could have helped me out in so many ways. So I'm looking forward to having conversations like that on the podcast. Pretty excited about that.
You've been building your personal brand since 2007, long before LinkedIn Top Voice was even a thing. In the age of AI, why does personal branding matter more than ever for technology leaders? And where do most of them get it wrong? And where can they start from?
I would say the best place to make sure that you include when you're building your brand or improving upon your brand. You're building your brand, you start with integrity. If you're starting to build your brand, start with integrity, of course. If you are improving your brand, you want to start with authenticity. And that means removing the noise. That means I don't want to look like someone else. I want to take my passion and compassion and be consistent with it, because the message that I want to deliver, I want to draw in that audience. And I want that audience to go and speak on my behalf. That if you're interested in someone who is strong on RAI and how to implement it, that you need to talk to Barbara. So that's how the authenticity and the consistency works with improving your brand. It is very important with the decisions that you make when branding, because once you let it loose, you have lost it. Lost it not in a bad term, but if you are acting on emotions and you put some things out there that does not represent you, which emotionally, that's just the way that it went. It's gone, right? I know we can go back and edit our conversations and all of that, but that first send is gone. You have to be careful. You also have to represent yourself on the things that you like and comment and post and share. If it's you and it represents you and you want to stand on the things that you need to be an ally, organizations, events that need allies, and you are that person, be that person. That's the authenticity that I spoke about. I know the difference. Some people think when you send a post, I'll use LinkedIn as an example, and you get all the likes and comments and all of that. That's great, right? It goes a little viral. Impressions are good and high. I look at things that I post that gets no traction. And because people will read it because the impressions are high, but people won't comment on it because they don't want that part of them to reflect. And that is what authenticity is all about, and being consistent in that. So show up in building your brand. Let them know exactly who you are in here as well as what they see on the outside. That part's easy.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Great answer. So, Barbara, in the past year, or let's say in the past 2 years with the boom of AI, what is that one thing that you had to unlearn as a leader to do better?
Slow down, allow myself to get to a comfort place with AI, which involved understanding the foundation of it. In its infancy, it was pretty much all about how all of these models work in tandem. And so for me, in all of my excitement, I had to make sure that I covered the bases. And then I took a moment to decide what I wanted to excel in. And it did not take long to see the commonalities of another new technology taking off and not taking the majority of the people with them. So I knew when I settled in on responsible AI, I knew that it wasn't going to be popular, but I knew that I had stories that could contribute, experiences that could contribute of being left behind, having to work harder, twice as hard to keep up, and that AI could either be the catalyst or the catapult. And without knowing which way that it was going to go, I wanted to make sure that I can pull as many people in as possible to be a part of that revolution. So slowing down in the very beginning and then deciding what I was going to focus on and then taking it from there.
Well, Barbara, before we wrap this up, one piece of advice for the leaders to stay intact in the age of AI.
Stay human on purpose, protect trust, and remember that the leaders who thrive in the age of AI, it won't be the ones who automate the most. It'll be the ones who understand what should never be delegated, because there is still a human intelligence before the artificial intelligence.
Well, Barbara, thank you so much. This has genuinely been a fascinating
Thank you.
conversation with you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you as well. My pleasure.